Hi everyone, it's KnifeWhites22 here. I hope you guys are all well. Welcome to this special edition chess video where I'm actually going to do a chess match played by Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer back in 1933. So definitely two very intelligent people playing this chess match. Albert Einstein, for those of you who don't know, probably remarked as one of the most intelligent men of all time, a physician and a scientist, and Robert Oppenheimer, also a physician, and marked as one of the great intelligent men of all time, and he was the father of the atomic bomb. Okay, so Einstein was playing white in this position, and Oppenheimer was playing black, and it was a very interesting game, not just because these two people were so great, it was a very interesting chess game as well. Neither of them were both at the super top level of chess, but obviously because they were so naturally intelligent, it was definitely a very good game, and it was clearly that they were very strong chess players in this position. Okay, so Einstein started off with pawn up to e4, and Oppenheimer in this position just opts for pawn to e5. So you'll see this in many games. Obviously, it's probably one of the most common setups, especially after knight f3, knight c6. This is definitely one of the most common setups in chess, and white has many different options here. But Albert Einstein opts for the bishop to b5 variation, which is called the Rye-Lopez, and Oppenheimer goes ahead and attacks the bishop. And basically what Oppenheimer is doing here is he's putting the question to the bishop, and Einstein doesn't want to take here because he will lose his bishop for this knight, and what could be a very open game in this position, he does not want Oppenheimer to still have the bishop pair, and for him to only have one bishop, which isn't doing much on c1. Okay, so from here, Einstein just brings his bishop back to a4, and Oppenheimer continues to attack it, gaining a pawn advantage on the queen side, and Einstein actually brings his bishop back to this very useful square b3, and basically Fischer used to do this. He used to just bring his bishop, sit it back on b3, and attack this f7 pawn the whole game. This is still very common sort of mainline stuff from the Rye-Lopez. Knight f6, again, still the main line, attacking this undefended pawn, and Einstein actually goes ahead and castles in this position, basically sacrificing the pawn, which Oppenheimer takes, just for the advantage of having his rook on the open e-file. But what you will usually see in the Rye-Lopez is white will usually be able to win this pawn on e5 back quite easily, one because it's only defended by knight and not a pawn, but as this rook is lined up against an uncastled king on already a semi-open file, and it's got two attackers on this pawn, the rook indirectly at the moment, it is going to be quite easy to win that pawn back, if I'm honest with you. Instead of moving your knight though and letting the pawn pull, Oppenheimer just plays his pawn down to d5 in this position. Obviously he's controlling the center now, and it's quite a good move because this bishop really looks out of the game at the moment. I mean, if you flip it over to Oppenheimer's point of view, he's controlling the center a lot, and this bishop on b3 doesn't look great because it's just staring at this pawn on d5, and it can't really move at all in this position. Okay, so Einstein now plays his pawn up to a4. This is what I just talked about. Maybe he's thinking he wants to get his bishop back into the game. So for example, if he wants Oppenheimer to take on a4, bishop takes a4, and the bishop will be penning down this knight to the king, this undefended knight actually, and cause Oppenheimer some problems, which is why Oppenheimer doesn't take, or let Einstein take, because if Einstein takes his pawn, he can't take back because it's pinned to the undefended rook on a8. So Oppenheimer just opts for pawn down to b4, again closing down the position, and making Einstein's bishop look even more silly in this position. So here, Einstein plays a very good move, pawn up to d3, and what this move does is it forces the knight to move off. So the knight goes off to c5, and now Einstein can play the very strong move, knight takes e5. And basically what this move does is all of a sudden there's a lot of threats to Oppenheimer in this position, because he's got this undefended knight on c6, and basically this is a discovered check to the king. So for example, all Einstein has to do on his next move is move this knight, and this king will be in check from the rook. So Oppenheimer definitely doesn't want this knight to fall, and he does want to protect his king as well. So he has to play the move knight back to e7. Of course, this does block in the bishop, so it's going to be very hard for Oppenheimer to castle in this position, especially with this rook on this completely open file, now that this knight has taken this pawn. From here, Einstein plays his queen up to f3, again a very good move, and basically what this move does is it actually threatens a checkmate on the f7 square, obviously because the queen would be supported by the knight, and d7 is covered by the knight on e5 as well. So Oppenheimer plays the move pawn up to f6. On the surface, this move looks very, very good. One, it's attacking the knight, and two, it's blocking the threat. So maybe Oppenheimer was thinking, okay, well, after this knight moves, say back to g4, the position is very, very good, and after possibly a trade, I can then play my knight round to g6 and then get castled in this position. But I think the main thing that Oppenheimer missed was the queen to h5 check. And you see this a lot in the King's Gambit and openings like that. If the f-file is open and the king is not castled early on, then these queens can often come to h5, or in black's case come to h4, and really give some nasty checks in this position. And the main problem for Oppenheimer is the knight is also covering the g6 square, and obviously there's technically only one defender because this pawn is pinned, because the queen will take the rook if this pawn moves. I think Oppenheimer thought he had a knight, protecting it, so he'll be able to take back with his knight. But unfortunately for Oppenheimer, after the knight did check on g6, this other knight is pinned. So technically he can't really take back the knight here, but he does anyway, because if he doesn't, it's going to be very, very nasty, and it's probably going to be a checkmate very soon. So Oppenheimer gives up his rook in this position. Poor performance from Oppenheimer, but he probably just didn't see that this knight was pinned in this position. From here, Oppenheimer again doesn't make a great move. He actually goes ahead and takes the bishop on b3 in this position. And the reason that I don't think this is a very great move is if we just flip back a second, you can see that this knight is probably the main minor piece which Oppenheimer has actively contributing to the center. And he just trades it off for a bishop which isn't doing too much on b3, which is why I didn't think it was a great move. Maybe he was thinking, oh, well, it gives Einstein isolated pawns and double pawns in this position. But this isn't really an issue, this isolated pawn and these double pawns over here, just because Einstein's up a lot of material and he's got a very good attack going in this position. Oppenheimer now plays his queen up to d6. I think this is an okay move, just getting his pieces active, so now his queen's come up to d6. You can get this bishop out, get this rook out, get this king over to the queen side, where it will be protected. But Einstein now plays his bishop down to h6. And basically the bishop's a bit lost in this position, because obviously the bishop is pinned, and now there's two attackers on the bishop. So Oppenheimer now plays his king up to d7, just because if the queen takes over here, it could get very, very nasty. So he doesn't want his king over there when the queen does come to take. But Einstein takes with his bishop in this position, just because he thinks his queen is better placed more in the center, so coming over to these f6 and g7 squares, and also he'll have more direct attackers on the knight, and it makes better use of this bishop on h6. From here, Oppenheimer fianchettos this bishop, and I think this is a pretty good move because it sort of takes your attention away from what's happening, and the sort of secrecy behind this move is it opens up the rook along the back rank. So this bishop is now pinned for Einstein, and he can't immediately move it. Bishop takes d7 did look very attractive, but then we would have queen takes h8, and then Einstein can win the queen here, but it goes back to an equal position with Einstein being only up one pawn. So Einstein definitely didn't want to go down that route in this position, but he saw that lucky for him, and he played his queen over to g7. So there's a lot of pressure on the knight on e7 now. There's now 3 attackers on the knight, and the only defender apart from the king is the queen. So Oppenheimer now plays his rook over to e8, and basically what this move does is it protects the knight from being taken. So now Einstein gets his last piece into the game, the active knight on d2. So basically what this knight's doing is it actually comes out to a very useful square in a second, which we'll see. But he's just making room for his rook to come across and to contribute all his pieces for the attack, because this knight over here on b1 hadn't moved for a while, so getting it to d2 is obviously a great option, considering it can't go to a3 or c3 in this position. Oppenheimer now plays his pawn down to c5. I think that Oppenheimer is getting a little bit desperate in this position. Just basically he's going to attack on the queen side with his pawns, obviously probably trying to get a new queen over here, because Einstein's got this weakness of double pawns, so pushing his pawns up the board, so probably because he can get a new queen over here on the side. So As I said, Einstein now places rook over to d1, and basically what this move does is it aligns the rook up with the queen and the king. So this rook could be very, very useful if this d-pawn was to move, which it does in a second, as you'll see after the move a5. And Einstein now plays a brilliant move in this position. He brings his knight up to c4, and this move does a whole lot of things. And I think after this move, the game is really lost for Oppenheimer, if I'm honest with you. Obviously this knight's attacking the queen, and Oppenheimer makes a bit of a blunder. He actually takes in this position, and you'll notice after Einstein takes back, the queen is pinned to the king. And obviously Oppenheimer's lost his queen. Also, it stops any attack of these pawns coming down the board, just because Einstein has solidified everything up, and actually has a slight pawn advantage in this position, just because of his extra pawn on b2. So obviously Oppenheimer has lost his queen, so we might as well take the rook on d1, so he doesn't lose that knight immediately, as there are now 3 attackers. And obviously, if Einstein didn't take back this queen, it would be checkmate on the next move. So Einstein takes back the queen, but really, after king c8 now, this bishop can be, this knight can be won by the bishop on f8, and Oppenheimer's really lost it, I'm afraid. Okay, so that was basically the game between Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein. Einstein just won here on move 24, bishop takes c7, but it was a very interesting game to study, obviously played by 2 very, very great people in this position. Okay, so thanks so much for watching the video, everybody. I've made a new bullet series with Connor. I'd just like to mention before we end, which should be very good. It'll be on our channel, so please check it out. It's very, very hilarious. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.